Ayo sat at her cluttered desk in the bustling newsroom of the Lagos Herald, her eyes scanning through a heap of documents. Her informant, Kunle, had just handed her a dossier implicating Shola Constructions in a series of deadly building collapses across Lagos. The photos were gruesome. Crumbling buildings, families weeping over the remains of their homes, and bodies being pulled from rubble. Kunle, are you sure about this? Ayo asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I risked my life to get this, Kunle replied, his eyes darting nervously around the room. They are cutting corners and paying off inspectors. People are dying because of them. Ayo knew this story was bigger than anything she had ever tackled. It could make her career, but also destroy her life. She felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with fear. Thank you, Kunle. I'll handle it from here, she said, giving him a reassuring nod. As Kunle left, Ayo's editor Chika walked over. What's that? She asked, pointing at the document. Evidence. Shola Constructions is involved in some serious corruption. This could blow the lid off everything, Ayo said. Chika's eyes widened. This is dangerous territory, Ayo. Are you ready for what comes with it? Ayo nodded, determination etched on her face. I have to do this, Chika. All those people who lost their lives. Alright, but be careful. We'll need solid proof to go up against them. Ayo's heart pounded as she started typing her notes, unaware of the shadows lurking around her. She felt the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders, but was resolved to uncover the truth. As she delved deeper, she stumbled upon a secret recording of a conversation between the CEO of Shola Constructions and a government official, discussing bribes and safety cover-ups. Her heart raced as she realized she had the smoking gun. Suddenly, her phone buzzed with a message. She picked it up and her blood ran cold. It was a picture of her younger brother Tunde, tied up and gagged, with a message: drop the story or he dies. Ayo's hands trembled as she looked around the newsroom. She felt trapped. The walls closing in on her. What was she going to do? Ayo stared at the photo of Tunde, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew the people behind Shola Constructions were ruthless, but this was beyond her worst fears. She had to act quickly. She grabbed her phone and called Chika. We need to talk now. Within minutes, Chika was at Ayo's desk. Ayo showed her the message. They have Tunde. They are threatening to kill him if I don't drop the story. Chika's face paled. This is serious, Ayo. We can't involve the police. They'll be watching. Ayo nodded, her mind racing. We need to think of something. A way to get Tunde back without compromising the story. Chika sighed, deep in thought. What if we pretend to drop the story? Make it look like we've given up, but still find a way to publish it anonymously. Ayo's eyes widened. How? They'll be watching us closely. We could reach out to an international journalist, someone who can publish the story outside Nigeria. It will keep us and your family safe, Chika suggested. Ayo considered the idea. It was risky, but it might work. Alright, but how do we convince them that I've truly given up? We'll stage it. You'll make a public statement retracing the story. Say it was based on false information, Chika said. Then we'll secretly pass everything to our contacts abroad. Ayo's stomach churned at the thought of lying to the public and to her colleagues, but she had no choice. Let's do it. The next day, Ayo held a press conference, her voice steady, but her heart breaking. I apologize for the false accusations against Shola Constructions. The information I received was incorrect, and I retract my previous statements. The backlash was immediate. Colleagues and friends called her a sellout. She felt her reputation crumbling, but she stayed focused on the plan. That night, Ayo and Chika met in secret with an international journalist, Maria, who promised to publish the story. They handed over all the evidence, hoping it would be enough to bring the truth to light. As they parted ways, Ayo felt a glimmer of hope, but when she returned home, she found her apartment ransacked and a note left on her bed. "This isn't over." Ayo's hands trembled as she read the note again. She couldn't afford to panic. She needed to find Tunde and ensure his safety. She called Chika immediately. "Chika, they left a note. They know something's up." Ayo whispered into the phone, her eyes darting around her ransacked apartment. "We need to be careful. They might be watching." Chika replied, "Let's meet somewhere safe." They decided to meet at a busy market, blending in with the crowd. When Ayo arrived, she found Chika waiting near a fruit stall, nervously glancing around. "What's our next move?" Ayo asked, keeping her voice low. Chika thought for a moment. "We need to make them believe you've completely given up. Do you still have the contact details for the informant, Kunle?" Ayo nodded. "Yes." "Why?" "Reach out to him. Let's see if he can help us find out where they are keeping Tunde. He might have some connections we can use," Chika suggested. Ayo contacted Kunle, who agreed to meet them at a discreet location. When they arrived, Kunle was waiting, looking more nervous than ever. "Ayo, this is dangerous, but I'll help you," he said, his voice shaking. "Do you know where they might be holding Tunde?" Ayo asked, desperation in her voice. Kunle nodded. "There's a warehouse near the outskirts of Lagos. I've heard whispers that they use it for activities like this." "Yeah, I've heard whispers like that." Ayo felt a surge of hope. "Can you get us in?" "I can try, but we need to be very careful," Kunle warned. They formulated a plan. Kunle would scout the warehouse, while Ayo and Chika waited nearby. If they found Tunde, they would call for backup. As Kunle left, Ayo's phone buzzed again. It was another message. "We are watching. Any wrong move and Tunde dies." Ayo's heart sank. They were running out of time. She needed to keep the kidnappers convinced she had abandoned the story. She called Maria, the international journalist. "Maria, any progress?" "We are set to publish in 2 days. Stay strong, Ayo," Maria assured her. Ayo felt a mix of relief and anxiety. They had to rescue Tunde before the story went live. She and Chika waited. Every passing minute felt like waiting for an eternity. Finally, Kunle called. "I found him. He's in the warehouse, heavily guarded." Ayo's heart pounded. "What do we do?" "We need a distraction. Something to draw the guards away," Kunle suggested. Ayo and Chika brainstormed, coming up with a risky plan. They would create a diversion outside the warehouse, hoping to lure the guards away long enough for Kunle to get Tunde out. As they prepared, Ayo's phone buzzed again. It was a video of Tunde, beaten and bruised, with a voice saying, "Time is running out." Ayo wiped her tears and focused on the task at hand. She couldn't afford to lose her composure now. They had to save Tunde, and time was running out. "We need to move quickly," Kunle said, urgency in his voice. "The warehouse is heavily guarded, but I think we can create a distraction with a small fire outside that should draw some of the guards away." Chika nodded. "It's risky, but it's our best shot." Ayo took a deep breath. "Let's do it. I'll set the fire. And Kunle, you get Tunde out, while Chika keeps an eye out for any trouble." They gathered the necessary materials and made their way to the warehouse under the cover of darkness. Ayo's heart pounded in her chest as they approached the building. She could see the guards patrolling the perimeter, their faces hard and vigilant. Kunle pointed to a spot near the back of the warehouse. "There, that's where we'll start the fire." Ayo and Chika crept to the designated spot, careful not to make any noise. Ayo poured the gasoline and lit a match, watching as the flames quickly caught and began to spread. "Go, Kunle, now!" Chika whispered urgently. Kunle nodded and slipped into the shadows, making his way toward the warehouse entrance. Ayo and Chika watched anxiously as the fire grew, illuminating the night sky. The guards soon noticed and rushed towards the flames, shouting orders and attempting to put out the fire. This was the moment Kunle needed. Ayo's breath hitched as she saw Kunle slip into the warehouse undetected. The minutes felt like hours as she and Chika stayed, hidden, praying for his success. Finally, Kunle re-emerged, supporting a limping Tunde. "They are coming," Kunle hissed, struggling to hold Tunde up. Ayo ran to her brother, her heart breaking at the sight of his bruised and battered face. "Tunde, we are getting you out of here," she whispered, tears in her eyes. They moved quickly, trying to stay out of sight, but just as they reached the edge of the compound, a shout rang out. The guards had spotted them. "Run!" Chika yelled, pushing Ayo and Tunde ahead. They sprinted through the dark streets, the sound of the guards' footsteps growing louder behind them. Ayo's mind raced, searching for a way to lose their pursuers. Kunle pointed to a narrow alley. "This way!" They ducked into the alley, the guards' shouts echoing behind them. Ayo's heart pounded in her chest as they navigated the labyrinth paths, hoping to find a safe haven. Finally, they stumbled into an abandoned building, gasping for breath. Ayo helped Tunde to a corner, checking his injuries. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice trembling. Tunde nodded weakly. "I'll be fine. We need to keep moving." Chika peeked out of the window, watching the guards search the streets. "We can't stay here long. They'll find us." Kunle looked around, his face grim. "We need a new plan. We can't keep running like this." Ayo's phone buzzed again. She pulled it out, her hands shaking. It was another message from the kidnappers. "You can't hide forever." The abandoned building provided a brief respite, but Ayo knew they couldn't stay long. She paced the floor, her mind racing. They needed a new plan, and fast. Kunle broke the silence. "I have an idea. I know someone who might be able to help us. He's an old friend, and he has connections that can get us out of the city safely." Chika nodded. "It's worth a try. We can't keep running blindly." Ayo looked at Tunde, who was barely conscious. "Let's do it. We need to get Tunde to safety and figure out our next steps." Kunle led them through a series of back alleys and side streets, avoiding main roads where the guards were likely searching. They arrived at a small, nondescript house on the outskirts of the city. Kunle knocked on the door in a specific pattern. The door creaked open, revealing a middle-aged man with a stern face. "Kunle, what are you doing here?" he asked, his eyes narrowing. "We need your help, David. It's urgent," Kunle replied. David's gaze shifted to Ayo, Chika, and the injured Tunde. He stepped aside, allowing them to enter. "Come in quickly. We don't have much time." Inside, David listened as Kunle explained the situation. He frowned, deep in thought. "This is serious. You are up against powerful people, but I think I can help." Ayo felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you, David. What can we do?" David pulled out a map and laid it on the table. "There's a safe house in a remote village. It's off the grid, and they won't be able to find you there. I'll arrange for transport." As David made the arrangement, Ayo's phone buzzed again. She glanced at the message, her heart sinking. "They've just sent me another threat. They know we are still in the city." David looked up, his expression grave. "We need to move now. The longer we stay here, the more danger we are in." They hurriedly gathered their belongings and prepared to leave. David handed Ayo a burner phone. "Use this from now on. Your current phone is likely being tracked." As they stepped out into the night, David led them to a hidden garage. Inside was a beat-up old van, inconspicuous but reliable. "This will take you to the safe house. Stay off the main roads and follow the map closely." Ayo helped Tunde into the van, her heart heavy with worry, but bolstered by a newfound resolve. They couldn't afford any more missteps. As they drove away, the city lights fading behind them, Ayo felt a mixture of fear and hope. She glanced at Tunde, who was resting but still in pain. They had a long journey ahead, but for the first time, they had a plan. Hours into their drive, they approached a checkpoint. Guards were stopping every vehicle. Ayo's pulse quickened. As the van approached the checkpoint, Ayo's hands trembled on the steering wheel. She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Tunde lay in the back, hidden under a pile of blankets. Kunle leaned forward, whispering urgently, "Just stay calm. We'll get through this." A guard motioned for them to stop. Ayo rolled down the window, her heart pounding. "Good evening, officer," she said, forcing a smile. The guard peered inside the van, his flashlight sweeping across the interior. "Where are you headed?" "We are just heading to the village to visit family," Ayo replied, her voice steady. The guard looked skeptical. "It's late for a visit. Mind stepping out of the vehicle?" Ayo's heart sank. She glanced at Kunle, who gave a barely perceptible nod. They stepped out of the van, trying to appear nonchalant. The guard began inspecting the van more thoroughly. Ayo's mind raced with potential scenarios. What if they found Tunde? What if they were taking him for questioning? Just as the tension became unbearable, another guard approached, speaking to the first one in a low voice. The first guard turned back to Ayo. "All right, you can go." Relief washed over her as she and Kunle got back into the van. They drove past the checkpoint, Ayo's heart still racing. "That was too close," she muttered. Kunle nodded. "We need to stay alert. They are tightening security." As they continued their journey, the landscape changed from urban sprawl to rural countryside. The moonlight cast eerie shadows on the deserted roads. Ayo kept her eyes on the map, following David's directions carefully. After several hours, they reached the village. David's instructions had been precise, and they found a safe house, a small secluded cabin, hidden among dense trees. They were greeted by an elderly woman, Mama Ada, who had a warm but worried expression. "David told me you'd be coming," Mama Ada said, ushering them inside. "You'd be safe here." Ayo helped Tunde inside, laying him on a makeshift bed. Mama Ada quickly tended to his wounds, her hands skilled and gentle. "Thank you," Ayo said, her voice thick with emotion. "We wouldn't have made it without your help." Mama Ada smiled softly. "You are safe now. Rest and regain your strength. Tomorrow, we'll figure out the next steps." As Ayo settled down for the night, exhaustion finally catching up with her, she felt a glimmer of hope. They had a safe place for now, but the fight was far from over. Just as she closed her eyes, her phone buzzed, the burner phone David had given her. She picked it up, dreading the message. It was from Maria. "The story goes live tomorrow. Be ready." The dawn brought a tense quiet to the village. Birds chirped in the trees and a cool breeze rustled the leaves, but Ayo felt no peace. The burner phone lay beside her, Maria's message replaying in her mind. Today, the world would know the truth. Ayo glanced at Tunde, who was still resting. His breathing was steady and the color was returning to his face. She hoped he would recover fully, but there were bigger issues at hand. Kunle and Chika joined Ayo in the small living room. "It's happening today," Ayo said, her voice steady. "Maria will publish the story." Kunle nodded. "We need to be ready for anything. They will come after us hard once the story is out." Chika looked thoughtful. "We need to have a backup plan, a way to stay ahead of them." Ayo agreed. "Mama Ada, do you have any suggestions?" Mama Ada, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "There's an old path through the forest that leads to another village. It's rarely used and should keep you hidden if you need to leave in a hurry." Ayo nodded, grateful for the information. "Thank you, Mama Ada. We'll keep that in mind." As the morning light filtered through the windows, Ayo's phone buzzed again. It was Maria. "The story is live. It's already making waves." Ayo felt a mix of relief and anxiety. They had done it. The truth was out. But now, they were exposed to the full force of their enemies. She turned to the small radio in the corner, tuning into the news. Explosive reports published today by international journalist Maria Johnson has revealed extensive corruption within Shola Constructions and implicates several high-ranking government officials. The report details bribery, safety violations, and a series of fatal building collapses. Public outrage is mounting. Ayo exchanged a glance with Chika and Kunle. They had struck a blow against corruption. But the backlash would be swift and brutal. They needed to stay ahead of it. Suddenly, a knock on the door broke the tense silence. Ayo's heart leapt into her throat. Kunle signaled for everyone to stay quiet. Mama Ada moved to the door, her face composed. "Who is it?" she asked, her voice calm. "Delivery," a voice responded. Mama Ada opened the door slightly, peering out. Standing outside was a young man with a basket of food. "David sent this," he said, glancing around nervously. Mama Ada accepted the basket and thanked him. As she closed the door, she handed the basket to Ayo. "David is still looking out for you," she said with a small smile. Inside the basket, along with food, was a small note. "Keep moving, they're searching. Use the forest path." Ayo's pulse quickened. "We need to leave now, they're closing in." They quickly packed their belongings, making sure to leave no trace behind. Ayo helped Tunde, who was still weak, but insisted on walking. Mama Ada led them to the back of the house where a narrow trail disappeared into the dense forest. "Follow this path," she instructed. "It will take you to safety." Ayo hugged Mama Ada, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for everything." Mama Ada patted her back. "Go now. Stay safe." They hurried down the path, the forest canopy closing above them. The air was cool and damp, the sounds of the village fading behind them. Ayo's heart pounded with every step. She felt a strange sense of resolve. They were not running away, they were regrouping to continue the fight. Hours passed as they navigated the winding path. Tunde's strength seemed to improve as they moved, and Ayo found solace in their progress. They reached a clearing where they paused to rest and catch their breath. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the trees. Ayo's heart skipped a beat. Had they been followed? Kunle motioned for everyone to stay hidden. The footsteps grew louder, and Ayo saw a group of men approaching. They were heavily armed, their faces set with determination. The lead man shouted, "Spread out! They must be here somewhere." Ayo's breath caught in her throat. They needed to find a way to evade these pursuers, or their fight for justice would come to an end. Ayo's heart raced as the armed men spread out, searching the forest with cold precision. She held her breath, praying they wouldn't be discovered. Tunde clung to her, his breathing shallow but determined. Kunle scanned the surroundings, his eyes landing on a small hidden ravine to their left. He gestured silently for everyone to follow. They moved cautiously, keeping low and staying as quiet as possible. The ravine provided some cover, but it was a steep descent. Ayo helped Tunde down, her muscles straining with the effort. Chika and Kunle followed, their faces tense with concentration. As they reached the bottom, they heard the men shouting above them, "They must be close! Keep looking!" Kunle motioned for them to move further into the ravine, where they found a narrow tunnel, partially hidden by underbrush. They crawled inside, hoping the pursuers would pass by without noticing. Ayo's heart pounded as she listened to the men's voices growing louder. She held Tunde close, her mind racing with thoughts of their next move. If they were found, there would be no escape. Minutes felt like hours as they huddled in the tunnel. Finally, the voices began to fade. Ayo let out a silent sigh of relief, but she knew they weren't out of danger yet. Kunle peeked out, ensuring the coast was clear. "We need to keep moving," he whispered. "They will double back soon." They emerged from the tunnel, careful to leave no trace. The forest seemed even denser now, the path less clear. They pressed on, every rustle of leaves making Ayo's heart jump. After what felt like an eternity, they reached a small stream. Ayo helped Tunde drink, grateful for the brief respite. Chika studied the map, her brow furrowed. "We are close," she said. "The village should just be ahead." They followed the stream until they saw the outlines of small huts through the trees. Relief washed over Ayo. They had made it, but their relief was short-lived. As they approached the village, they saw a group of men standing guard, their expressions wary. Kunle stepped forward, raising his hands to show he was unarmed. "We seek refuge," he called out. "We mean no harm." The men exchanged glances, then one stepped forward. Who are you and why are you here? Ayo stepped forward, her voice steady, despite her fear. We are escaping from those who wish to silence us. We've exposed a great wrong, and now we are being hunted. The leader of the group studied her for a moment, then nodded. You are safe here. We'll protect you. They were led into the village, where they were given food and a place to rest. Ayo finally allowed herself to relax, the tension of the past days easing slightly. As night fell, they gathered around a small fire, discussing their next steps. Kunle suggested reaching out to their contacts in the media to keep the pressure on the authorities. Ayo agreed, but she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The story was out, but their enemies were relentless. They needed to stay vigilant. Just as they were starting to feel a semblance of security, Ayo's burner phone buzzed. It was a message from Maria. The authorities are cracking down. Be ready to move again. Ayo's mind raced as she read Maria's message. They had only just arrived, but already it seemed they would have to move again. She shared the news with the group, their faces reflecting the same mix of frustration and determination. We can't keep running forever, Kunle said. We need a plan to turn the tables on them. Chika nodded. Agreed. We need to go on the offensive. If we can gather more evidence and rally public support, we might be able to force the authorities' hand. Ayo thought for a moment. What if we reach out to international human rights organizations? They could amplify our story and put additional pressure on the Nigerian government. Tunde, his voice still weak but resolute, added, we also need to protect ourselves. We should move to a new location, but stay close enough to continue our work. They spent the night planning their next steps. Kunle would contact their allies in the media and human rights groups, while Chika and Ayo would work on gathering more evidence and securing their next safe house. As dawn broke, they prepared to leave the village. The leader of the villagers, an elderly man named Apajide, approached them. We will keep you in our prayers. Stay strong and remember, we are not alone in this fight. Ayo thanked him, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. They left the village, moving through the forest towards their next destination. Their journey took them to a small, remote cottage that David had arranged. It was well hidden and provided a perfect base for their operations. They settled in, immediately setting to work. Ayo and Chika contacted Maria, updating her on their situation and coordinating the next phase of their plan. Kunle reached out to international organizations, sharing their story and seeking support. Days turned into weeks as they continued their efforts. The public outcry grew louder and international pressure mounted on the Nigerian government. But their enemies were still out there, waiting for an opportunity to strike. One evening, as they were finalizing a major report to be sent to an international news outlet, they heard a noise outside. Ayo's heart raced. She signaled for everyone to stay quiet and grabbed a flashlight. Kunle peeked through the window. Someone's out there, he whispered. I think we've been found. Ayo's heart pounded as she carefully moved towards the window, flashlight in hand. She saw shadows moving outside, the flicker of torchlights casting eerie shapes against the cottage walls. They had to act quickly. Kunle gestured for everyone to move towards the back of the cottage, where a hidden exit led into the thick forest. We need to get out, now, he whispered urgently. Ayo grabbed the important documents and their remaining supplies. She held Tunde to his feet and they moved silently towards the exit. Chika went ahead to scout the path. The sound of approaching footsteps grew louder, sending a chill down Ayo's spine. Just as they reached the exit, the front door burst open. Armed men stormed in, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Ayo and the others slipped out just in time, disappearing into the night. They ran through the dense forest, their breaths coming in ragged gasps. The shouts of their pursuers echoed behind them, but they pressed on, driven by desperation and a fierce will to survive. After what felt like hours of running, they reached a clearing. Chika, who had been scouting ahead, motioned for them to stop. There's an old barn up ahead. We can take shelter there, she said, pointing to a dilapidated structure in the distance. They hurried towards the barn, slipping inside and bolting the door behind them. Ayo collapsed against the wall. Kunle nodded, his face grim. We can't keep running forever. We need to take a stand. Chika looked determined. We have enough evidence now. We can make a final push to expose the corruption and ensure our safety. Ayo agreed. We need to send everything to Maria and the international organizations. If we make this public, they won't be able to ignore us. They set up a makeshift workplace in the barn, working through the night to compile their evidence and craft a final comprehensive report. As dawn approached, Ayo sent the report to Maria and their other contacts, along with a desperate plea for help. Just as they wished, the barn door creaked open. They froze, but it was only Mama Ada and David, who had been following them and managed to find them just in time. "We need to move again," David said, urgency in his voice. "But this time, we have a safe place where you can stay and continue your fight." David led them to a remote safe house, better hidden and more secure than the previous ones. There, they regrouped, knowing this might be their last chance to turn the tide. As the day went on, the impact of their report began to spread. The story gained international attention, and the Nigerian government were forced to respond. Public support grew, and pressure mounted for a full investigation into Shola Constructions and the implicated officials. That evening, Ayo received a call from Maria. "Your story has sparked a global movement," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "Human rights organizations, the international media, and even foreign governments are demanding accountability. You've done it." Relief washed over Ayo, but she knew the fight wasn't over yet. "Thank you, Maria. We couldn't have done it without you." Maria's voice grew serious. "Stay safe, Ayo. There's still a long road ahead, but you've made a huge step forward." As Ayo ended the call, she looked at her friends and family, their faces reflecting a mixture of exhaustion and hope. They had come so far, and despite the danger, they were closer than ever to achieving justice. The knock echoed ominously through the safe house, sending a wave of tension through the group. Ayo exchanged a worried glance with Kunle and Chika. Who could it be this time? David moved to the door cautiously, peeking through the peephole. He turned back to them, a look of surprise on his face. "It's the police. They say they're here to help." Ayo felt a surge of skepticism, but nodded for David to let them in. Two officers entered, their expressions serious but no hostile. "Miss Ayo Oladile?" one of them asked. Ayo stepped forward, her heart pounding. "Yes, that's me." The officer nodded. "We've been instructed to ensure your safety and to assist in your efforts. The international pressure has forced our government to take action. Your story has made a significant impact." Relief and disbelief washed over Ayo. "Thank you," she said, her voice trembling. "We've been running for so long. Is it really over?" The officer's face softened. "It's not over, but it's a turning point. The investigation is underway, and key figures are being held accountable. We need you to come with us to testify and provide your evidence." Ayo felt tears of relief sting her eyes. They had done it. Their relentless pursuit of justice was finally bearing fruit. She looked at her friends and family, their expressions mirroring her own mixture of hope and disbelief. As they prepared to leave the safe house under police protection, Ayo felt a weight lift off her shoulders. They were no longer fugitives. They were survivors and whistleblowers, ready to see justice served. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Ayo and her friends provided their testimonies, and the evidence they had gathered was instrumental in dismantling the corruption network. Public support continued to grow, as the international community kept a watchful eye on the proceedings, ensuring transparency and accountability. Ayo stood in the courtroom, delivering her final testimony. Her voice was steady, filled with the strength of someone who had faced immense adversity and emerged victorious. As she recounted their journey, the room listened in rapt silence. When the trial concluded, the judge announced a series of guilty verdicts. Key figures in Shola Constructions and several corrupt officials were sentenced to prison. The courtroom erupted in applause, and Ayo felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, eager for a statement. Ayo stepped forward, her heart full of gratitude and determination. "This victory is not just for us," she said, her voice carrying the weight of their journey. It's for all those who have suffered and lost their lives due to corruption and greed. We will continue to fight for justice and ensure that such tragedies never happen again. As the crowd cheered, Ayo felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to see Tunde, his face beaming with pride. "We did it, sis," he said, his voice choked with emotion. Ayo hugged him tightly, the weight of their struggle finally lifting. They had faced impossible odds, but together they had triumphed. As they walked away from the courthouse, Ayo looked at her friends and family, their faces filled with hope for the future. They had not only survived, but had also brought about meaningful change. The road ahead was still uncertain, but they were ready to face it together, stronger than ever. Ayo stood on the steps of the courthouse, surrounded by her family and friends. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over them. She looked out at the city, knowing that their fight had made a difference. They had turned the tide, as their story would inspire others to stand up against injustice. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, Ayo felt a deep sense of peace. They had won a significant battle, and they would continue to fight for a better future, knowing that together they could overcome any obstacle.